And welcome to this series of Mindset Kabanga educator videos for grade 5 technology. In this series, we're discussing how to implement a technology project in the classroom. In the previous episode, we dealt with designing and how to use very simple models to help learners to generate their own ideas. The learners used paper squares and their cardboard hands to model the areas they will need for the chicken homes. Using Matt's knowledge of measurement and scale was a part of their designing. In this episode, we will be dealing with skills of making products. Making is one thing that sets technology apart from all other subjects. Here, the learners must put their ideas and learning into a real, touchable form that we can see. It brings together knowledge, resources like tools and materials, ideas and creativity, and skills and insight. Most learners enjoy this stage of making their own models and will work very hard at it. Making also gives us an opportunity to make learners feel proud and successful. Today in studio with me is Tembeka Tilpu, whom you'll recognize as the teacher whom you've just seen in the classroom insert. And from ProTech, we have Chris Mutupi and Peter Middleton. Everybody welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are thousands of skills that you can call making skills. For example, bricklaying, sewing, and cooking. In technology, we can't teach every making skill, but we can identify the kinds of things that we always do in a project. Let's call these the making stages, and they are measuring and marking, cutting and shaping, joining, finishing, and decorating. Chris, let's first talk about measuring and marking.
I would like to demonstrate few techniques regarding measuring and marking. This represents a pole for the fence. It's a model of a fence pole. And with a pen or a pencil and a ruler, one is able to just make use of a pen and a ruler to actually measure and mark the length of a model fence post. Dressmakers make use of measuring tape, dress pattern, as well as pins to measure and mark the length of the material that they need in order to make a dress. Now, this is a model of a football field. In order to make a football field, you need a long tape measure, as well as a string and pegs to actually mark the football field. Let me put it here again. Now, after doing this, they'll make use of a line to actually make the lines visible. Now, this is the football field that I was referring to over here. Now, all these techniques that I've just demonstrated are different, of course, but they all are about measuring and cutting.
Cutting and shaping is next on our list. There's a huge range of tools and cutting methods. All we try to do in school technology is to let learners work with a few tools and materials and realize that different materials need different techniques for cutting and shaping. Watch the next scene from the lessons. Try to spot the moments when the teacher is showing the children how to mark and measure and how to cut and shape. Notice what she tells them about different materials too.
Good. These are the areas we're going to be covering when we make our chicken homes. I am now going to show you the material I'm going to use. I have my net from the orange bag. I've got a thin cardboard. I've got my wood glue, but because we need to share and it's too much for you, we're going to use our containers to pour it in. We've got our Bostik adhesive glue. We've got our takeaways polysterenes. I've got my pie dish. I've got my boxes. I've got my corrugated cardboard box. I've got my pot squarer. We have a paint, we'll be painting. This is all what we're going to use for material. And also the thick cardboard, which you can use for the outside yard. Thick cardboard. Now that I'm done with the material, I'm going to move to the tools table. Look carefully. This is my tool table, but because you need to be safe when working with tools, I'm going to demonstrate for you how we do it. I have my dowel stick here with me. We're going to use this one to make a perch for the inside shelter. You know that in the inside shelter we need 5 hands. So I'm going to measure my perch using a hand. Starting from this end, this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. My 5 hands are going to be accommodated here. Now I'm going to need a little bit more space so that it can allow me, if I want to hold my patch, I need to hang it. So I'm going to move only 2 fingers from the mark that I made here. 2 fingers to allow more space. What I'm doing now, I am measuring and marking. Okay. Then after that, I'm going to cut my patch because I don't need the whole stick. I only need this part from here to here. I'm going to put it in my cutting board, which is clamped on my desk so it doesn't move. Using my mini saw, I'm going to cut on the mark that I have made. I hold it tightly and I start cutting. I'm done sewing now. This is the part that I'm going to use for the patch in my inside shelter. Okay? Good. Everything you need is here. I have a thick wood. We're going to make the posts of the fence using this wood. I'm also going to cut it because I'm not going to use the whole part making the post of a fence. Hey. This is the part, this is the size I'm going to need for my fence post. Okay? Okay. Now, moving on, we're going to start our making process. What I want you to do now, because we are going to make 3 areas. We're not going to be all making 3 areas at the same time. In our groups, we're going to divide ourselves in pairs. 2 are going to be making the outside yard, 2 for the inside shelter, and 2 for the nesting place. This is how we're going to go about when collecting the material. Then the rest will follow. Material we need. Starting now.
The children in that episode we saw were marking, measuring and marking. They were cutting and they were joining. They don't always look like they're doing these very well at first, but we must remember that there's 4 projects in a year and we can actually get them getting better and better through every project. We as teachers need to give them time to practice these skills in the classroom though. I have here some examples of cutting tools. This is a hacksaw and we use it to cut thinnish materials, wood or steel. You want to put it on a surface and do that kind of thing. I also have these, which are a good pair of kitchen scissors. They are much, much better than anything you get in a stationery kit. Mainly because they are able to cut thicker materials, for example, like tin. Did you notice in episode 2, they used these to cut out the chickens? Some of them tried to cut out the outlines into the gaps, and some of them tried to cut around the outlines. Now you'll find it much easier to cut around the outlines first and then to cut into the gaps.
Yes, they cut and shaped the hands, but you'll remember that when they made use of paper mache to make containers, they actually made use of molds, to get the shape that they wanted. And this is actually what we call, shaping materials in technology.
Joining parts together is a key stage in making any product. There are again many different joining techniques like using tape, glue, sewing, and welding. In school, we can teach only a few. When learners make strong joints, we can see that they understand something important about structures.
Yes, just look at this whole maker is known as a gimlet. Now just see how I make use of the gimlet to actually make joints. I take a piece of scrap cardboard, and these are the 2 pieces that I want to join. What I do is I take the gimlet and press down in order to make a hole. Again over there. Then I take these two pieces that I want to join and I make use of a paper fastener to actually join them. This is a paper fastener. And I insert the little paper fastener in the holes that I've made, and you can see I've now combined the two pieces, and paper fasteners are usually used to make a pivot joints, and this is an example of a pivot joint.
Final stage is finishing and decorating. Plastering a house is a finishing skill, and painting is also another finishing skill. Often people add decoration, for example, small sculptures or fancy doorknobs. In technology classrooms, we focus in protecting the product from damage like rust or rot, making it look good and feel good. We make any sharp edges smooth, we sand, we paint, and we add decorative features. Try to spot the children finishing and decorating in this next scene from the lessons.
Yes! This is good!
More white paint? And paint. I'll see it now.
It's a molly.
Tembek, everybody seemed very busy in that lesson, especially you.
That's technology. Everyone is busy towards working towards their project, finishing their project. At times, some can do something completely different.
And how do you cope with that? Don't you feel out of control?
It can be a bit chaotic, yes, but I do ask myself, are the learners working towards finishing their product? If they are, it's not out of control. But if some have finished or stuck or just being plain silly, I have to stop them and try to refocus them towards finishing the product.
One of the main concerns for teachers and principals is trying to organize a room for children to make their projects.
Yes, it's a big problem in schools. People think that you have to have a proper laboratory, a workshop with power tools and expensive equipment to do technology, but that's not true.
Yes, it's just like that. You'll find that in most cases, teachers tell learners to go and complete their projects at home. But really, this is not, the way, of making learners know how to cut and do all sorts of things in technology. The best way is for teachers to look for a very, very good project that, addresses all the learning, outcomes in technology, and that can be done in the classroom. And they need to make use of that project and make sure that learners actually do that project in the classroom. Because if you tell them to go and complete the project at home, you know what happens. Their mamas, their papas will actually help them, complete the project. And you'll see a nice project that will not have been done by the child in the classroom. That will have been done by his brother or, sister, and so on.
Exactly. Now, back to you again, Tembeka. How do you prepare for practical work?
Well, I try to imagine what is the product is going to be. Then I try to think what we'll be using with the learners. I also bring the basic material for them to use, but I also ask the learners to bring the relevant material.
You have an ordinary classroom, and when you get to the making stage of the project, you have to reorganize the classroom so that learners are able to work on their projects, on chairs and tables. Actually, it works very, very nicely that way.
I try to keep space in between the groups. This allows them to move freely to the sewing, cutting, and materials tables. Flat tables are better than the slopey ones, and I arrange them into these big working stations. I think of the tools they will need. I try to organize the tools in a toolbox for each group. The toolboxes are the ice cream tubs you see. Then I use the group leaders to take to the groups the tabs and to bring them back. I also like to have key practical activities down at the workstation, like sewing. It is easier to monitor if you know where it is happening. It also allows me to use the resources better because we don't have to have a saw for each group. We can use only 4 saws.
Chris, some people might look at this and go, ooh, but that looks like fun. Where's the learning?
Yes, it's true. Technology is fun. But actually, when you look at it properly, you'll see that children are actually learning a lot of skills here. Some of the skills that they're acquiring when they do the project are marking skills. They are also acquiring cutting skills. They are also acquiring measuring skills. And those are very, very important skills in technology. Well, they also, Peter, I think you
That's
agree
on
with
the
me,
yes.
that they also do the joining. They learn joining, how to join materials together. And most importantly, what I know they like, in most cases, is when they look at their products and they shape it nicely. Those are the skills. And they also learn how to decorate, their products.
That's on the curriculum level. But the making stage also gives learners opportunities to express their own personality. It allows them to personalize the learning.
Yeah.
They're making choices for themselves. They're making decisions for themselves. And this makes learning, those kind of learnings that you were mentioning, much more meaningful as well as fun.
I think a lot of people think that learning should be boring, but I just urge them to try technology.
And what sort of tips would you have for your colleagues on how to deal with practical work?
I think it's to be brave. Once you've gone through the project, it becomes easier. And learning, they love it too. It just gives you a good feeling when they tell you that technology is their best learning area in class.
Hey, you really like technology. But I just have one question for you. Tell me, when you go around, in the classroom assisting learners, what exactly are you looking for?
The first thing I look for is which learners are stuck and having problems. I try to get them moving again. Secondly, I keep learners motivated. I want to praise their good ideas and encourage them to develop their own abilities further. I think if you make a learner feel successful, then they will be successful. They certainly try much harder for you if they feel good about the work they are doing. Thirdly, I gather information for assessment. While I'm helping them, I'm also looking at how accurate and careful their work is. Of course, if they worked at home, I would not seen them working.
So you're actually assessing them whilst helping them?
Yes, that is formative assessment. I move around and watch and try to remember how skillful the learners were so that I can record that into my assessment record.
Don't you forget sometimes?
I forget some and I remember some. But what I do, at the beginning of each session, I try to remember those that I've forgotten. Then I ask them to cut more accurately. At times they come to me and show me how well they have worked. Then I record the findings.
How many sessions does it take you, do you think, to do a technology project?
It takes a third of the session. In 6 weeks, that will be 2 weeks, because making takes longer, and it's where most of the skills arise.
Thank you very much again for visiting us here at the studios. Much appreciated. I feel so congested with technology information. And that's it for today. In the next episode, we will look at evaluation as a stage of a technology project. We will also have an in-depth look at assessment in technology. So until then, here is something for you to think about. Can you list the 4 stages of making? Can you give examples of what the children were doing in the 4 making stages of this project? Can you tell a colleague what you will be doing when you come to the making stage of the project with your own learners? Rishoke Mola. Goodbye.